Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Chapter 1. The year 2065 has proven to be rich in interesting scientific inventions for the general public. Young Dr. Michael Holliday is inspired by his invention today. Ethan, our invention is going to make us a fortune. I've already figured out how we're going to monetize it, said he inspirationally to his older colleague. Michael, you're still very young and promising. We should think 10 times before we publicize our achievements. We invent with good intentions. If our invention falls into the hands of unscrupulous people, it becomes dangerous. Don't rush into monetization, said a senior colleague. Ethan, how long can you and I stand on the sidelines of life, as if we are observers? It's time to dispel the myth that scientists are people who live in their own narrow world, that everything human is alien to us. You, for example, how long are you willing to put up with your wife's reproaches? While you are here thinking about good intentions and earns a lot of money, organizing leisure activities for rich companies, young and beautiful girls. You, of course, forgive me for my frankness on you, do not notice how long she has long put you in nothing. And all because of the fact that you have little money compared to her. You cannot at the right moment bang your fist on the table and put her in her place. It's time to end it, said Michael, inspired. No, Michael, I think of people first. Not then you and I are morally responsible for our inventions. If someone breaks their fate, how do we live with that? How do we look civilization in the eye? Ethan said, wiping his glasses. Ethan, you're a golden man, but you're not practical. It's up to you. I've offered my solution. If you don't want to reap the fruits of your labor, it's your decision. I think I'll take the risk of realizing my grandiose plan. Don't complain later that I didn't give you enough. A couple of hours later, Michael was already talking passionately about his invention and his wife. Unlike his old colleague, his wife Adriana, knowing Kim, accepted his idea to get rich with joy. Michael, can you at least tell me what invention is the reason why you can't make a deal with this man? She asked. When the couple was daydreaming about the near future, we invented a method that helps any person to change his appearance to that of any other person. For example, any person can come to us and in a couple of hours become indistinguishable copies of their favorite star, said Michael. Is it makeup? Grinned we all know. Kina is not makeup, it's last century. We use a high-tech material that is no different from human skin. It won't wash off, it won't burn, it won't freeze. Nothing will happen. Even if someone takes a fist to the face, their face doesn't lose its beauty and integrity. And it costs pennies, Michael said. If it costs pennies, how are you going to make a fortune out of it? Wouldn't it make sense to make it more expensive? Adriana asked. You have to think 3 steps ahead. Get a new look. There's more to it than that. But people don't need to know all the secrets at once. After all, what they want is for any of their problems to be solved quickly and without hassle, and preferably for a nickel. With this task, I think we have coped. There is another stage at which the money will flow to us by the river. You'll just see. Trust your genius, said Michael, dreamily leaned back in his chair. And you can make a face for me. Megan Fox would love to have a face like that, said Adriana. No, honey, I don't want you to use our invention. I haven't told you everything. And we won't tell our clients everything. You don't need to change your appearance. You're already my prettiest, said Michael Holliday, hugging his wife. No, I don't. It's not a matter of principle for me. For me, it's about you realizing your vision so that we can finally afford our dream home, so that we can take advantage of services and stay away from the masses so that we get the best out of life. And then I'll find something to do and start my own business and earn money too, said Adriana know-it-all dreamily. But things were not so smooth in Ethan's family. His wife, the owner of the most popular escort agency in town, Betty, was not happy with her husband again today. I'm Benjamin all day long, and there's no one at home to take out the trash or water the flowers. She was outraged from the doorstep. Honey, I just got home from work too. Give me some time. "I'll do everything," said Ethan, hurriedly putting his briefcase aside and pulling on an apron. "I've given you the best years of my life." "So what? I don't need you to do all the housework yourself. I just need to hire a proper domestic staff. You promised me that 3 years ago. Why don't you give up those inventions of yours? Those useless lab tests and come work for me?" Betty asked her husband reproachfully. "Betty, how can you imagine such a thing? Do you want me to quit science and go to work in your escort agency?" asked he with trembling hands, letting his glasses slip down his nose. "What's the big deal? I've been in this business almost all my life myself from scratch, you could say. At first it took a long time to gain clients with our own hands and feet, and when the competition appeared, you went to a new level. I gathered young ladies and brought the service to a new level. You know, no shortage of customers. But managing staff is always a challenge. We need someone who knows how to get my girls out of unplanned situations. It's no big deal. But the money, the real money's out there." "Ethan," said the wife, waving her hands in front of her husband. While the mother and father were arguing, their daughter Christina woke up. "Don't you miss you for 7 days?" said she, hurriedly rolling her pink suitcase out into the hallway and dousing herself. "Where is she going when she has a session coming up?" asked Ethan to his wife with surprise. The wife shrugged her shoulders. "But folks, how much do you need to explain? A tourist guide's job is like that. I have to pay for the trips, I have to run a little more. I'll buy myself a sports car, and then I'll catch up on my studies. Or should I just leave it now? Will you buy me a car?" asked her daughter, putting aside her red stilettos. "That's a question for your father. Dad, you explain to your daughter. Her peers are driving the best cars. Only yours is still driving a 5-year-old Porsche Cayenne." The wife turned the tables on her husband again. Ethan couldn't find anything to say but shook his head. Meanwhile, the daughter was already getting into the car of an elderly millionaire who had booked it from the evening and was waiting for her at the entrance. Chapter 2. "Kathy, you would at least sneak into the room all day long lying without taking her eyes off the phone," threateningly said the mother to her daughter. But to moms, it would quickly turn into a mess anyway. "So what? Look at her shameless mess. She says so the point is to never be a mess." "But you're a girl." Mother was indignant. "That's right, I am a girl," Kathy said, and stared dreamily out the window. The mother looked at her daughter and noticed something suspicious. "Okay, stop. Sit down," she said, and sat down on the edge of the bed. "Are you in love?" she asked. "Why is it noticeable?" asked Kathy playfully. "Actually, he's so cool at home. Look how cool he is," she said, and turned the phone to her mother. Clara saw on the screen pictures of a handsome guy in a brightly colored jacket. She started flipping through the pictures one by one. Here he is in the pool with a cocktail in his hands. Here he is riding over the country town on his flying car. And here he is surrounded by some girls. "Kathy, but he's a bit of a slacker," Mother said. "And that's because he can afford it." "You read his last names," Kathy said, not hiding a blissful smile. "Benjamin Chesterton. So what does that make him? Is this the son of the Chesterton everyone's talking about?" the mother asked and rounded her eyes. "Yes, the son of the most famous Chesterton, and the only heir in the family, and just a handsome guy. And yes, he's not only handsome, he's very vulnerable and touching. He and I have had a couple of private conversations," Kathy said. "Didn't you ask him if he wants the daughter of a simple teacher and a simple construction worker? I wish you the best, of course, but you have to be realistic. They're not going to pair these things up in their own circles. The difference with ordinary people. It will be painful for you to realize it later," she said, and sighed heavily. "Mom, if a woman has a trump card in her hands, it doesn't matter what her background is or what her chosen one wants. I know how to win Benjamin for life," said Kathy, and stretched blissfully again. A spell. That's the kind of thing that can get you in trouble. We've been down that road before. Well, when we were young, of course. Maybe you should just focus on your studies. Are you gonna have a lot of boyfriends? And let's be realistic about what you can do. You're smart, but you're average looking. There's no need for illusions, said Clara. That's what I mean. I'm average looking, but technology is not standing still. This issue is easily solved. Since you've already learned the whole truth, I'll warn you in confidence. If I come home the other day dressed as famous singer neighbor Alba, please don't faint with your father. It's normal now. You go to a clinic, and in a day you're transformed into any star. Then you have all the cards in your hand. You go about your life with confident steps and conquer all heights. And even Benjamin Chesterton, Kathy said. What, are you the one who's going to change your looks or something? Do you know it's not healthy? Asked the mother. All this stuff about body transformations is made up by envious people. They want people to still torture themselves by going to gyms, beauticians, buying cosmetics, and everything else. It's all a huge amount of money and time. There's 1 million people involved in the process. It's their bread. And of course, they don't want to lose all their customers in one day. So they come up with this idea that there's going to be a transformation. It's something terrible. There's nothing really wrong with it, Kathy said. War. I don't like the idea anyway. Father won't be happy about it, that's for sure. And how do we feel? Raised our own girl, and then now that she's different, it'll be hard to adjust. My friend's son already did that. He took on the appearance of some athlete. He immediately lost his temper, abandoned all his interests, only and hangs out with different girls. He's not interested in school or work, said Clara. Mom, you and your father said that study and work are necessary for a person to live well. And if a person has already learned to live well, why all this fuss? It's time for you older generation to learn to look at life in a simpler way, Kathy said. Clara couldn't find anything to object to her daughter. She only reflected on the mores of youth and began to move around in her daughter's room. When her daughter left on the nearest day off ostensibly for her own business, and then returned in the guise of a famous historical singer, the detectives could have. The mother almost fainted. So you weren't kidding? Did you really do it? The mother was horrified. What's wrong? See, now instead of a crooked nose, I have a perfect eye. Look at those eyes. How can you resist them? And those lips. And I can't stop looking in the mirror, said the delighted daughter, looking at her new face in the mirror and admiring it. Why would you do that? You have to get reacquainted with everyone. I don't understand our times, said Clara in bewilderment. That's the whole point. It'll be a surprise for everyone, especially Benjamin. He's a fan of the singer. Does your Benjamin know that it's Ceci Kamal Bey now a little more than his father? She's from our youth. She must be about 80 years old at least. That was made up by her haters. She just turned 23. She said so herself. And the one from your youth is that her historical double, said Kathy. How much does a treat like that cost? Where did you even get the money? Mother finally found it. What's it worth? No more than my lunch at the university. Yes, that's how much Dr. Michael Holliday recently invented this method. The clinic just opened recently. There's a promotion where they give everyone their dream look for a token dream, said Kathy. I still don't like the idea. Don't forget to introduce yourself to your father, or he'll think something, said Clara, still worried about her daughter's dramatic transformation. Chapter 3. The freshmen had already had time to get acquainted with each other and to mark their interest groups, but everyone was surprised by the son of the oligarchs Chesterton. Having such money, why didn't he go to study somewhere in Moscow, for example, or in St. Petersburg? They asked him on the first day. Probably he had done something wrong in front of his father, and they wouldn't let him go anywhere, grinned another student. Cities and distances are not a problem at all. In my case, there are things to do here. I need to be with my father for a while. Help him with his business problems, said Benjamin, briefly, but the bespectacled man's version of the guilt trip to Batya really hit him. It was true. Benjamin was already in trouble with the law, so his parents kept him around until he turned 25, or until he found a good, reliable girl to be his life partner. But Benjamin didn't plan to tie his life to anyone yet, so he remained indifferent to the female members of the group. For several days now, one bright girl didn't like it very much. She is used to the fact that in any place men's eyes are fixed on her, and they first of all try to make conversation with her. And she herself is pretty good at building rapport with them. She decided to make the first move on an attractive object like Benjamin Chesterton. "Hi, aren't you bored here?" Christina asked Benjamin. "Hi, where can I go? Knowledge is power. It's like my dad says, you have to study science. Are you bored here? I'm free after class today. If you want, we can drive around the city or walk over it. What do you say to that?" asked Christina playfully. "No, I don't feel like it. I'd rather go to my friends. It's more fun with them," said Benjamin. "What kind of friends will you take me with?" asked Christina, not wanting to give up. "But since you want so much, maybe I will. They're interesting guys. One of them is a music producer. There are rising stars, athletes, and all," Benjamin said. Christina's eyes lit up. She had long dreamed of reaching a new level in her social circle. Now she decided not to miss this chance. "Who is your closest friend that you can tell everything to?" Christina asked. "I haven't met such a friend yet. Or maybe it will be a friend. I don't know yet," said Benjamin, trying to get rid of the intrusive interlocutor. "So you don't have a friend yet? Can I say it's a vacancy?" Christina asked playfully. "Well, you could say that. I'm waiting for my ideal. You know who I like. The ideal of female beauty, I consider the singer Sosaka Malibu," dreamily said Benjamin. Christina grinned. "Why do you need that old lady? She just looks our age. In fact, she's almost 150 years old. My mom used to tell me she was popular in their youth. It's just that she's King's success," Christina said. "I don't care if she's 370. It doesn't matter. She just has very beautiful and bottomless eyes. When you look into those eyes, you forget about everything in the world. But that's the kind of friend I'd like to have around me. At least I can dream about it. It's not forbidden." Christina was glad that she had managed to get acquainted with her new classmate and to establish at least some connection with him. Now she was eagerly waiting for the lecture to end, so she could go with him to his usual circle of friends. Kathy skipped class that day. Instead of university, she headed to the mall in search of clothes. She ran from one boutique to another, trying to find something that more or less fit. The singer's outfits could surprise her lover, then she should do it extravagantly, she decided. Let it be just in time for him to miss her tonight. Maybe he'd still care. And tomorrow she would appear in front of him and his dream come true. At the party among Benjamin's friends, Christina behaved in a relaxed manner. She had watched from childhood how her mother knew how to guess men's whims and train girls to get their way. At home, she would tell her daughter, "You need to become an important specialist and not to have to watch men's hands and depend on their moods. This kind of bread, though it may taste good, is not good for you." Christina strove to live up to her mother's expectations, but some other force led her in a different direction. In her early teens, she was already close enough to fellow students. They had friends who were already working. They were generous, if a girl gives her attention. So Christina was quietly drawn into her mother's line of work, only through another firm. There she was also advised that she could cleverly cipher her occupation, moonlighting as a tourist guide. The mother was pleased that the daughter was taking a different path. The daughter was pleased that she was now independent of her parents and was making decent money on her own. So it was not difficult for her to unravel Benjamin and make him feel at ease. At the same time, she managed to figure out the mood of his inner circle. Everybody's out. Our esteemed friend Benjamin is entering adulthood. He is now a student. And on this occasion, he must be introduced today. Well, Benjamin, we'll order champagne for everyone. One of his friends approached him. No, on the contrary, it is you who should congratulate him and give him a party. I understand Benjamin spoils everyone at every party. Christina answered for him. Before Benjamin becomes an adult, he's already got a collar around his neck. What's next? He's gonna get under his heel, ask his girlfriend for permission. Guys, we're losing our friend, said the friend, and the crowd erupted in laughter. Benjamin did not understand this move of Christina. He looked at her with bewilderment, but he lived and quickly stroked the situation. You can't tame the mice, it's good for them. If someone doesn't like it, he's just jealous of himself, inexperienced in life. Benjamin concluded that Christina is a sophisticated girl ready to stand up for him. From that moment on, he was in awe of her. For the rest of the evening, he did not leave her side. They sweetly and bravely put in place all friends who dared to say something to them. When it was time to go home, Christina asked Benjamin to walk her home. He put her in his flying car, and they drove through the night sky of the sleeping city. Benjamin, you're a magician. I'm so impressed with tonight. I guess I'd like to thank you for that gift, she said. When did you land at the girl's house? Come on, there's no need for anything, Benjamin said, embarrassed. But you didn't even ask what it was about. Maybe you can guess, said Christina playfully. Well, a kiss, I guess, said Benjamin, slightly embarrassed. No, my kisses are not a gift for you, but something to take for granted. You'll see my present one of these days. I probably won't make it the day after tomorrow, but the day after that I definitely will, Christina said, lastly, and reproached from the automobile. Chapter 4. A couple of days later, Benjamin was stunned to see the heroine of his fantasies at the entrance to the building of his university. His feet carried him to meet her. Girl, I haven't seen you around here before, he said to me, averting his eyes from Kathy and her new appearance. Kathy almost fainted with happiness. Yeah, I've seen you a couple times before. My name's Kathy, by the way. Shall we get acquainted? She held out her hand. While Benjamin sang her praises, they went to the auditorium together. When he found out that the girl looks just like his favorite singer and is also his tomb, he was happy. So you are here. Let's sit together on the last desk. I don't know anything about this higher math, said Benjamin. I'm all for it, but don't worry. I always got straight A's in algebra for higher math. Pulled you through, said Kathy. Finished. The first couple got a call on Benjamin's cell phone. Benjamin, hi. I promised you a surprise. Well, it's ready. Just come out to the courtyard. I want you to see it first, said Christina in a happy voice. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna step out for a few minutes. My friend's name is there, by the way, also from our group. Her name is Christina, said Benjamin and hurried to meet her. Kathy felt a pang of jealousy in her heart for the first time, but she didn't realize that this was just the beginning. Meanwhile, Benjamin was stunned to see for the second time today a second girl who looked exactly like his favorite singer in the courtyard of the university. So that's over the top. How did you manage to transform so much? Asked. Let that be my little secret. We women have a lot of secrets. You don't need to know about them. Do you even like the way I look now? Christina asked. Yes, I like it a lot. But there's one thing. There's another girl from our group who looks just like you. So it's like you're one egg. You're twins, and so it's really cool. Cool. Yeah, trust me, cool, said Benjamin, showing his approval. Christina was immediately alert. Who dared to beat her? When she came to the audience and saw Kathy, she immediately realized who her main rivals were. The others in the audience were not surprised at the resemblance. Each of them has already heard or even seen how people change their appearance beyond recognition. The beauty industry helps them in this. However, such a quick, effective solution as Michael Holiday was the first time, and few people knew about it. Listen, girls, you look like sisters. You even have the same height and equipment. How are we going to tell you apart? Surprise one of the girls in the group at recess. In my opinion, by manners, said a smart guy with glasses named Gleb. Looks are nothing. But intelligence determines everything, he added, to somehow save himself from Christina's perplexed look. It's easy to tell us apart. The one next to Benjamin is me, Kathy. And if Benjamin is not around, it will be Christina, said Kathy. The crowd laughed. But Christina could see that she had accepted the challenge and was now ready to fight to the last bullet. Chapter 5. Benjamin, as usual, was relaxing in a nightclub, surrounded by his friends. When he was just approaching the entrance, someone called out to him from behind. Chesterton delayed for a second. A male voice sounded. Benjamin turned around and saw not far from him a guy in a black leather jacket that was a size too big. But it wasn't the jacket that impressed him the most. The very fact of this man's appearance in his life, Benjamin felt a shiver run through his body. "You, William, hi. What are you doing here?" he asked in utter confusion. Rule could barely keep his gaze on his face. Boys, his eyes darted rough scars all over William's face. Such fates. "And you thought I was rotting in a hospital bed. Wrong if I thought that. I found my strength and survived, and now I intend to achieve my own." "By all means," William said. Benjamin's eyes flashed back to the events of 3 years ago. William was his best friend. They had gone to programming school together. William had shown great promise. Even at that time, he was already taking orders from time to time and earning good money. There were never any secrets or disagreements between him and Benjamin. Benjamin, meanwhile, often went with his father to his office, where he gave instructions to his managers. "Everything must have a financial component, otherwise our actions are immoral," he used to say in order to motivate his employees. As a teenager, Benjamin took these words too literally. In addition, the story of his friend William, who was already earning his own money, made him think about his own source of income. "Dad, I want to go into business like you and make a lot of money." "How did you tell your dad? What's the problem?" "I'm very happy that my son is so strongly motivated. All you have to do is find a field, and I'll help in any way I can," his father assured him at the time. Benjamin relied entirely on William in this matter. He conveyed his father's intentions to support their endeavor. William shrugged his shoulders and said that for the time being he intended to support himself as a teenager, and that he would only start thinking about his own business after he had received a higher education. But the idea of having his own income did not give Benjamin any rest when he came up with a plan on his own. It was a software development in the banking sphere, which Benjamin learned about in some other country. William immediately understood the idea and wrote the program. Benjamin started to implement it. He gathered a team and started to earn the first money, until unscrupulous people laid their eyes on their business. William noticed it right away and said, "You should tell your father that we are being persecuted and want to take away our business. If the bandits find out whose son we are, they'll leave us alone. This way they think we're just young guys who decided to take off on our own. So for some reason, I wasn't gonna listen to my friend. Don't worry about it. In business, it's normal to get in trouble. I've seen my father deal with these things all my life. He doesn't complain to anyone. He talks to everyone and solves everything himself. I have to learn to be independent too," she said. But William doubted whether they could manage on their own. One day, a stranger came over, introduced himself as someone's lawyer, charged that their program had violated someone's rights, and billed them for moral damages. William again insisted that Benjamin consult with his father about how to handle the situation. Benjamin again acted cocky. "Don't worry, William, we won't pay them any money. If he comes again, we'll call him in for a one-on-one talk. And then we'll work it out," Benjamin said, and ignored him. A couple weeks later, 3 men came to them. The demands were the same, only this time they demanded a much larger sum than the last time. Benjamin kept his word and arranged a man-to-man talk on the waterfront, where they went with their friends in 2 cars. William was among them. The conversation did not work out. As soon as Benjamin tried to object, 2 unfamiliar adult males called their accomplices, and a group fight ensued. Benjamin immediately figured that his boys could not handle such a powerful attack. He managed to gather his friends into one automobile and drove away. They noticed William's absence among them too late. Only then did one of them call the police to report the fight. Anonymously. A couple days later, Benjamin showed up at the hospital with a wad of cash. "Buddy, you did good, but no hard feelings. You know my dad. He's already warned me twice. If there's trouble with the police again, he won't put me in for a while. He'll put his business in. You get better and try not to make a fuss with the police." Then we took care of it ourselves, Benjamin said and left. William decided to go along with his friend again. He didn't file a police report and explained it to the doctors as a random street scuffle. Only a month later, when he was finally allowed to stand up, William went to the mirror, and when he saw his reflection, he almost fainted. His face was completely covered with lines. The doctor later told him that they were slash wounds. He advised him to have plastic surgery later and get his face cleaned up. But the plastic surgeon turned out to be honest. He said that the face would not become the same. There would still be rough features and a lack of symmetry. After William was discharged from the hospital, he decided never to make eye contact with people again. He had no parents, and his few friends and acquaintances no longer recognized him on the street. They simply expressed sympathy and advised him to look for solutions. This continued until William had exhausted his money supply. And then he decided to start a new life by all means. So he first sent his resume with a photo of himself before the tragic events. He was approved and called in for his interview. But as soon as the girl from the personnel department saw the guy with a disfigured face, she hurried to finish the interview as quickly as possible. Out of politeness, she promised that William would be contacted soon, but no call was made. At the next interview, a girl of William's age was also caught. When it was William's turn and he crossed the threshold of the office, she screamed with fright and was about to call William's security. He had to urgently apologize and removed himself from the office. In the future, he began to send resumes without a photo, but indicated that he had defects in appearance. However, no one responded to his resumes anymore. William guessed why. "Benjamin, I need help. They said my face could be fixed with plastic surgery, but it turns out it's expensive. I came to you as a friend. Maybe you can help me out for now. And then I'll get a job, and I'll be with you," William said. Benjamin avoided this outcome the most. Someone had already informed his father that he was dealing with criminal elements again, and had even been reported to the police. His father was extremely concerned about the matter. He carefully asked Benjamin about the circumstances of the incident, but Benjamin did not reveal anything so as not to lose his father's trust. And if he learned of William's appearance, the old secret risked becoming known to spoil Benjamin's prospects. Benjamin hastily slipped his hands into his pocket and pulled out some bills. "Take this one for now. I don't have any more cash on me. You and I will meet again in the next few days and I will give the required amount," Benjamin said in a hurry. "But you can do something, even without money," said William. "All you have to do is talk to your father and get a reference for me so that I can somehow increase my chances of getting a job. And that's not gonna be easy. I'll tell you my dad doesn't like to vouch for others, but I'll talk to him about it and let you know." "You live at the same old address?" Benjamin asked. "No, mostly at the train stations," answered William. Then Benjamin chose some words to cheer up his old friend and hurried to the club to meet his friends. William realized at once that he could not count on his friend's help, so he walked away with his head down to wander around the city until midnight. With the money, Benjamin William decided to finally grab a bite to eat at a roadside fast food outlet. While he sat and ate on the big screen, an advertisement for Dr. Holliday's clinic was spinning. "Have you long dreamed of becoming a replica of your favorite star? We thought it was expensive. It used to be. But now this problem is solved thanks to the unique solution and scientific developments of Dr. Michael Holliday. Transformation into a different personality is possible in just one day. And such a procedure costs no more than your lunch in the canteen," said the advertisement. Hearing such an unconventional offer, William had a brilliant idea. A couple of days later, he visited Dr. Holliday's clinic. Smith was met by a beautiful girl and immediately changed in her face. "You can't have a young man in here," she said, looking at William's unfashionable clothes and his unshaven face. "Excuse me, but I'm here to see Dr. Holliday." "I really need his help," said William. "I'm sorry, but we have a dress code and face control." "This offer is limited," the girl said, and started pushing him out the door. William tried to explain his situation to the girl, but it was all in vain. The beautiful girl's attacks were joined by a crowd of girls and women who were sitting in line to the doctor and waiting for an appointment to leave his office with completely different faces. And you could already tell by them that he was homeless. Probably drank his face off too. "Young lady, you advertise yourself as a decent clinic, and here you have a homeless man coming in. What kind of disrespect for your customers?" said one of them. "But I have that case where my natural appearance is 5 minutes away from unpleasantness." William tried to explain, but no one was going to take in what he was saying. After a few minutes of arguing, with his head down, William left the clinic. His last hope now lay in Benjamin's conscience, but the latter seemed to forget his promise in a moment, engaging the two beauties of his dreams with his attention. Chapter 6. Kathy, if I suddenly look at Christina, you know it's my attempt to make sure I'm hugging you. "It's easy to confuse the two of you," Benjamin once said, after my relationship with Kathy was solidified. "But be careful, we may look alike, but there's a gulf between us. Their voice is different, their morals are different, and it's a sport, it's impossible," Kathy said. "That's true. I noticed that a long time ago," said Benjamin. "But still, for a while you kept playing on two fronts." Kathy smiled a sly smile. "I needed that to make the right choice. But Christina disappointed me immediately." "She's too risky with my friends," Benjamin said. "And I thought you were disappointed in her after the photo of her with an old oligarch in an embrace spread," said Kathy. "But that too. Although then she tried to blame it on you. But I determined from those photos that it wasn't you, because you were making me do my higher math homework that day," said Benjamin. "By the way, it was your method with higher math that my parents liked too. They would like to meet you sometime as soon as possible," she added. Lissa couldn't believe her ears. She is madly in love with Benjamin and would do anything for him. And not only is she in a relationship with him, but her parents are already interested in her. "I'm all for it. I'd love to meet them. I think a guy like you could only be raised by very wise parents," she said excitedly. "Well, since you really think so, get ready. I'll try to organize evenings. An acquaintance next weekend," Benjamin promised. Kathy, elated by the upcoming momentous occasion, decided to share her joy with her mother. "Mom, I didn't tell you right away, but I have a boyfriend," she said in the evening in the kitchen, helping to prepare dinner. "How happy is that? But don't get married yet. You need to finish your studies, get a job, and then get married. Tell your boyfriend that," Mom said. "One doesn't interfere with the other." "Mom, you have old-fashioned views," said Kathy. "I'll look at you when you've got a baby crying all night, and you've got a session coming up, and I need an unprepared look. Husband's not happy. Then what do you have to say about it? One does not prevent the other. We've been there, we know." "And argue with Mom," said Clara, not distracted from her piece of text in her hands. "Oh, Mom of your youth, that was a lot to take in. But the next generation learned the right lessons from it all. We have different realities. For example, if I marry Benjamin, I don't have to think about all those worries in his family. It's all handled by domestic staff or robots. Yes, they have robots working everywhere, in his father's office, at home, and in the garden," Kathy said dreamily. "God, don't remind me about those metal monsters. They've put half the town out of work as it is. I don't want to hear about them." So this Benjamin can afford what? He's the son of a Chesterton oligarch. Everybody knows him. That son is about to take his place. He promised to hand over part of the campaign if Benjamin would wise up and find himself a nice girl. A good girl. and he chose me. He wants me to meet his parents this weekend, Kathy said. You mean the same son of a rich family? I warned you that he might disappoint you, but you're still flying under the radar. People like that don't think of ordinary people as equal. Your Benjamin, of course, can make your head spin for a while, but I'm afraid you'll cry afterwards. It's best not to be under any illusions, Mother said. It's time you changed your mindset to a positive one. I thought you'd be supportive. You'll see, I'll be able to win his parents over, said Kathy, puffing up her cheeks, and went to her room. She was going to do her homework, but Benjamin did not leave her mind. Kathy crammed her homework and went to bed. In the morning, her mother Clara was awakened by her daughter's precise scream. She ran out of the bedroom and headed to her daughter's room. Kathy stood in front of the mirror with her hands covering her face and continued to scream. What's wrong? What's with all the screaming? Asked the mother. Kathy did not take her palms off her face and cried. My face barely spoke, Adriana. What's wrong with your face? Show me. Clara tried to see her daughter's face, but she huddled in a corner and continued to cry. God, what happened? Why don't you explain first? Is something irreparable? Said the mother, and headed for the exit. Yes, I've turned into a homeland. Kathy shouted after her and removed her hands. When she saw her daughter's new face, she was horrified. Smooth skin. Kathy was covered in solid wrinkles. Her face had lost symmetry. Her eyes were barely visible. All in all, Kathy's face could now be characterized now as a perfect fruit from the market. Her mother clutched her heart and sat down on the edge of the sofa. I asked you not to experiment on your already beautiful appearance. You're a beauty in your youth. You're still very young. Why did you have to go to all that trouble to transform yourself? My God, what are we going to do now? Where is your doctor who did all this? Dial his number quickly. Dad, he'll take you to him. In the meantime, why don't you tell them you're sick? God, how can you do this? The outrage was read overnight by the mother. Hearing the complaints of the clients of Dr. Holliday's clinic, replied that Kathy could only come up tomorrow. During the course of today, life for Kathy became a total nightmare. She stopped eating and drinking. She was categorically afraid to go to the mirror and see her ugly reflection. She feverishly studied materials on artificial face restoration. The internet gave out stories, one sadder than the other. Meanwhile, reassured by Kathy's absence, Benjamin decided to pick her up after school. He called her when he had already arrived at her house. Alyssa had to lie that she had gone with her mother to her grandmother and would come only in 3 days. She herself then prayed to God that she would be able to restore her face in 3 days, and when she remembered that in the meantime she was living, enjoying her new face and beautifying herself in front of Benjamin, the ground went away from under her feet. The next day came. Kathy was already waiting for Dr. Holliday outside his office in the early morning hours. He took one look at her and didn't even raise an eyebrow. This can happen if you do not take good care of your face. The material is very fragile and can be shaped even by strong emotions. But it's okay. There is a way to restore everything as it was and even make it a little better. But this time the cost will be a little higher because we will try on a different material. Since you didn't save the previous one, said the doctor, do something important faster, Kathy begged. Excuse me, but what will the cost be? Asked the father cautiously to the doctor. Dr. Holliday smiled with a satisfied look and scribbled something on the paper. His mood was generally upbeat these days, as his first clients were already coming back to him and were willing to shell out any money. And now that the doctor had full power over them, he could name any price he wanted. This was his original idea, which no one had realized much about. If he had set an initially high price, like other inventors, no one would have come to him. And for symbolic pennies came a lot of young girls and boys who wanted to become like anyone but themselves. Now these young people make up the entire line that crowds around his office. True, they all cover their faces with masks and other ways. To refuse the services of the doctor now, they do not have the opportunity because to eliminate the sharply appeared wrinkle can also only himself, so to speak, the antidote. He also has a unique one. Seeing the prescribed price, Liam sat down on the chair and grasped his heart. "Doctor, are you sure your procedure costs that much? Even the rich can't afford it." Well, that's one way of putting it. A man's face is at stake, and a man's face is an indication of his essence. You can go without my procedures, but then you will have to gradually get used to the new reality, said the doctor with a smile, looking at the wrinkles on Kathy's face. "This is outrageous. It looks like a fraud. You can't do this. What will happen to my daughter's face? Obviously, she can't go out in public like that now." "But this amount of money, it's completely out of our family's reach," the father said indignantly. "But no one is rushing you. You can wait until you have saved up the necessary amount. Some people take out loans as an alternative. Well, and if even that does not suit you, then there is only the service of a psychologist, so that your daughter learns to live with her new face. By the way, I can recommend a great therapist. She's in the building next door. Here's her card," the doctor said, and held out his wife Adriana's business card. Kathy and her father left the doctor's office as if they had been dipped in water. If on the way to the doctor's office her father had still reprimanded his daughter for experimenting with her appearance, now he was worried about her. And the doctor's approach caused a wave of anger in him. And at home he was already telling Clara, with great indignation, about the exorbitant cost of the new procedure. "It's unthinkable. We wouldn't have that much money, even if we sold the apartment and had to beg," said Clara. "What kind of nonsense is that? We won't sell the apartment under any circumstances," resented Liam. "Well, what to do with your daughter's face now? Don't you feel sorry for her? How will she show her face in public now? Moreover, she was in a relationship with her boyfriend," the mother said. "Let her sit in the corner and think about what to do next." "I have no options," the father said, and went to his room. Kathy sat silently with her hands over her face. Her mother approached her and asked her to show her face again, to see into her daughter's face. She was horrified again. It would only take Holiday to restore Kathy's former beauty. Chapter 7. Dr. Michael Holiday is today enjoying life in the huge house he bought recently. His wife, meanwhile, has returned from shopping satisfied and in a good mood. "Adriana, do you think my parents would like our house?" he asked thoughtfully. "I don't know why you'd ask that. You're not going to bring them to our house," said his wife wearily. "What do you mean? Bring it? They're my parents. They are the people who gave me life, upbringing, education, and everything else. In my old age, can't I invite them to my house to live with me for a while? That's not the deal. They're elderly and they need care. And I didn't sign up for that. Elderly people don't do well when they move. They won't like it here," Adriana said. "But I have to try to make him like it. You know, my mom's never been happy with me my whole life. Maybe that's why I've gotten results. But there's something childish inside of me that needs to come out. And now that I'm an adult, now that my parents aren't so principled, it's a good time to iron out the inner resentments. We need time together. I think I'll go over there one of these days and ask them to stay with us. And you, my dear, you could do something other than run to the stores and salons. Maybe some sense of values would come into your head." Michael rebuked Adriana. "But I need time to figure out what I want to be." Adriana said thoughtfully, "Do you have a professional degree? What's the problem? You go and work in a specialty, like me, for example," I answered. "Michael, you feel good because your specialty is interesting. You make a difference in people's lives. What's interesting about my specialty? Nothing. I want to work with people, like giving them advice, and I want them to pay me well," Adriana said dreamily. "There's only so much trouble out there picking up their patients who don't have the money for a second facial transformation procedure. Teach them to accept their ugly looks. That's where the money will be," Michael said. He thought about it for a moment, and then he burst into rapture. "Actually, I've just come up with a brilliant idea. So they come to me for a new face. I do it the first time for symbolic money, and the second time I already put a real bill, and so on up. And not everybody can pay the real bill. Some of them leave. They have to live now with the face of an elderly person. That's how you can gather and do self-esteem training. They really need it, Michael said. I guess this kind of activity works for me. I listened to a lecture by a guru the other day. I can listen to a couple more lectures. The program will be ready. And you, please do not reject those who have no money. Redirect them to me, said Adriana. When finally caught up with the essence of the new family business, she and her husband were happy that now they can use any opportunity for the benefit of the family. Only they couldn't agree on Michael's parents. She told him in no uncertain terms that she wasn't going to have them in her house. But Michael was determined to earn his parents' approval at any cost. He had simply been drawn in that direction for years. Recently, he talked to his friend about it, but he too was puzzled. I don't understand why such aspirations. Michael then tried to explain his position to his friend. You see, many people have such a desire to grow up, to be established, and to build a new adult relationship with their parents, where there is approval, respect, acceptance. I was a bit of a naughty kid growing up. My parents tried in every possible way to guide me to the right path, and their directions were perceived by my childish psyche as violence. That's what's still bothering me today. And if I reorganize it all, I think my worldview will be different, Michael said thoughtfully. Don't worry about it. Michael, let it all go and enjoy life. You can't change your parents for what they were. They'll be like that for the rest of their lives, said the friend. Michael wasn't too upset when even his closest friend didn't get his point. After a while, he talked about it with Ethan, who did not want to participate in the business, but continued to work on their common invention. I see your point. Michael, you are right. It should definitely be done. We are shaped by the totality of our feelings. If a feeling has a place, then it will have to come off of it. Then it has to be related to reality. If you find a relationship with them, then you yourself will have a leap in development. Believe me, I have long been interested in such matters, said Ethan. Ethan, thank you. Once again, I am convinced that you are a unique person. How are you doing? You still haven't thought about joining our cause. It's going pretty well. By the way, Michael said. I know, Michael, but I remembered pretty well. That's not all. You'll see the rest when the time comes, said Ethan. And he continued to work meticulously on his inventions. In the meantime, Michael took a little vacation and came to his parents. They were happy to see their son. Michael talked about his new successes, about the purchase of a new bake house, and suggested that his parents move in with him or at least live with them for a while. To which the mother reacted in the usual way. Oh no, you don't. What will happen to my vegetable garden? No, no, no. Who would help me weed the beds, plant cabbage, or remove weeds? She cut it off. But not enough. Well, how many cannot disappear into the vegetable garden? Vegetables are available everywhere now. I need you as moral support. Remember, your entire youth was spent running around. You rarely had the energy to talk to me, like when you were a kid. Maybe you can find such an opportunity now, Michael said. No, don't even ask. I would still think about it, and if you had money, I'd understand teaching my grandchildren. So what's the point of your father and I interfering with your life? The mother insisted. Michael sighed and thought, Mom, I just want to be still your favorite son, like in my deep childhood. And we didn't spend much time with Dad either. Just want to make up for it, said, but all his arguments were in vain. His mother wouldn't go to see him, and his father would only repeat after her. Michael returned to his home in a sad mood. On the way, his head was filled with new ideas about how to increase his capital and how to afford even more goods. What if then his parents wanted to reward him with their attention? Chapter 8. For 3 months now, Kathy has been in a deep depression. The parents couldn't do anything to help. Her mother had barely managed to get a year's deferment on her studies. Otherwise, Kathy is completely bogged down in her life. She walks within the 4 walls of her room. Fox looks at the pictures on her phone over and over again, seeing other people passing away and sinking back into hopeless sadness. After trying several times to call and see each other, Benjamin became frustrated. He did not have time to deal with his relationship in detail. On the other hand, his parents were in a hurry to finally show the beautiful girl who could win their son's heart and influence his views so much. For Christina, the absence of Kathy was a real gift. There were rumors among her friends that Kathy had big problems with her appearance, and she would not soon be able to return to society. Christina decided not to miss this moment. In 3 months, she easily became Benjamin's closest friend, and he was already ready to introduce her to his parents on the day of their meeting. As usual, Christina acted relaxed. Benjamin was proud in front of his parents that he had such a beautiful and interesting companion. Only the Chesterton oligarch was not thrilled with the bride candidate, but he tried not to show it. When the family evening at the restaurant was in full swing, Chesterton stepped out briefly to answer a phone call. No one close to him took any notice. Meanwhile, he managed to catch his sister-in-law in the hallway by the bathroom and grabbed her arm. "What do you think yourself beautiful?" he asked menacingly. "I don't know what you mean." Christina was horrified. "Do not build yourself an innocent sheep. You are the one who accompanies my assistant on his trips abroad, and my closest friend. The restaurateur Klinsky is your regular customer. I remember you well. Maybe you had a little too much to drink." Said, "I'm sorry, you must have me confused with Kathy. She's the one who moonlights on the court. She's the one who's got her eye on Benjamin. And she's been messing with me. Remember, Benjamin was going to introduce me to you 3 months ago, and it was canceled because Kathy had to go away with a regular client. It's just that she also goes to the same transformational coach. She specifically ordered a copy of my look to attract Benjamin. I can barely cope with fighting that girl myself." Christina spouted a pre-prepared cover story. Chesterton did not fully believe the girl's words, but hesitated and let her go. Christina made the right conclusions. She needs to hurry in conquering Benjamin. Otherwise, his parents may interfere with them in the future. How I had no trouble already after 4 months to make Benjamin himself propose marriage and be together for life. The Chesterton oligarch persuaded his son to take his time, to wait a little, but his wife was already under the influence of Christina. In the end, the family played a luxurious wedding. The young were bought a separate house. The father led his 20-year-old son to his business, and the life of all played with new colors, until an unexpected surprise happened. In his life, he was living. Early on a weekend morning, Benjamin hugged his young wife and decided to get plenty of sleep today. And he was living and had plans of his own for today. She was going on a grand shopping spree. She carefully moved Benjamin's arms gently onto the pillow and tiptoed out of the bedroom herself. Not 2 minutes later, Benjamin had to jump out of bed. Hearing a scream from the bathroom, Benjamin came running and saw Christina. She was sitting on the floor with her hands over her face and continued to scream. "What's wrong? Honey, what scared you?" asked. Christina couldn't find the words. She kept screaming and stomping her feet in the bathroom. "Benjamin, get out of here. Don't you need to see this? What's wrong? God damn it, will you at least explain? I was confused, and my face is burned. I put on a new mask yesterday. I think they tricked me at the store. My skin burned." Screaming Christina. "Oh, come on, don't beat yourself up. We'll go to the doctor. He'll prescribe some medicine, and it'll heal. Come on, get ready. I'll drive you." Christina didn't hesitate. She wrapped a scarf around her face. She put on large glasses, let her hair down, and in an hour she was already sitting in Dr. Holliday's office. There was nothing unexpected about this for Michael. In fact, his business had been on the upswing lately. Christina, on the other hand, was serene. "Doctor, didn't you warn me there would be consequences like this? How am I going to explain all this to my husband now? He'd faint if he saw me like this. In fact, any other man would go crazy in fear of my face. Yes, and began to warn you in the beginning, because our unique material has such a property. It dissolves when a person deceives himself. There must have been some changes in your life. What are you talking about?" "Doctor, this is inhuman. It's cynical and unethical of you. How am I supposed to live with this?" Christina resented it. There are two ways. Either a person removes complaints about his appearance and transfers attention to the inner life. Then after some time, the face itself will recover and become more beautiful than C.C. Kimalbi. Or you have to repeat the procedure, and that will only be enough for a few months. Then one has to repeat it again. If one doesn't want to do the work internally, said the doctor, I don't want to hear it. About your fairy tales, about the inside. I need you to fix my face right today. Right now, Christina said firmly. No problem. The cost will be like this, said Michael, and drew some numbers on the paper. The numbers made Christina furious again. The doctor calmly guided her to the only correct solution in this case, again and again repeating his arguments in different words. Michael sometimes wondered himself why he liked to do such cynical things to people, and then to look at their suffering and turn out to be a savior for them again. But big money, impenetrable queues at clinics, rising popularity took his thoughts in a different direction. He quickly switched from thinking to new dreams, and everything fell into place. When he heard the cost of a Christina facial, even Benjamin was taken aback. That's nice. Where are we gonna get that kind of money? I could pull some money out of the company's working capital, but that would hurt our future, and my father wouldn't approve. Maybe there's an easier way. What if you really take an internal approach? Are you crazy? I'm 20 years old and you're telling me to do something I don't know what to do. I need my old face. Otherwise, I can't be held accountable for my actions. I'm willing to do anything for this goal. Screaming Christina. We are thinking about calling again and asking for a part of the money to restore the artificial face. Neighbors might. This was the first time Benjamin was faced with such a dilemma. After a couple weeks of scandals and resentment, Benjamin found a way to get the money. He decided to pull it out of his father's investment in his company. In the meantime, Christina, wearing the same big glasses and scarf, went to listen to Adriana's lectures. Everyone knew about how to love herself with any appearance. Adriana was happy to have more listeners day by day. Money was flowing into their family again. Chapter 9. A year passed imperceptibly. Christina has long since regained her beautiful face as a famous singer and continues to please Benjamin. Meanwhile, instead of increasing income, Chesterton noticed that his son's capital was melting before his eyes. He had noticed before that his son's expenses were too high, disproportionate to his income. Chesterton's wife was not accepting of Christina from the beginning, and when she found out that with her arrival and the money in the family began to leak, she became furious. We have to do something to get our son away from this upstart, she said to her husband. He'd been hatching the idea himself. I agree. I don't like her from the start. I've talked to Benjamin about it many times, but he can't be persuaded. She seems to have opened his head. He doesn't even notice it. He doesn't know about her dark past. She blatantly denies everything, Chesterton said. Do you remember when he lived? He was friends with some other girl for a while, and then she suddenly disappeared. This one was nice, well-mannered, but somehow Benjamin missed her. Isn't there any other girl in the world but that hysterical girl? Maybe he'll meet someone else. If that Christina gives birth again, there'll be no peace in the house. They usually give birth like that, so they have to do something to get a fortune from the family. Chesterton didn't think twice. He usually has many ways to control reality, both his own and others. I know how to solve this issue. It's a lot easier than we think with just one phone call, he said, and started going through the numbers on his phone. Meanwhile, back at the Benjamin house, the hysteria is back. Christina went for some kind of wellness treatment yesterday and came back happy. But this morning she's back in front of the mirror and is screaming for Dr. Holliday. Benjamin, hearing her screams, has already guessed what happened. He didn't even bother to argue with Christina this time. It was useless. That day he had taken another large tranche out of the company's turnover, which his deputies had secretly reported to his father. Chesterton only nodded his head and reassured his employees, promising that this outrage would soon be over. He also warned that Benjamin might need help and support during this period, and they took note. So a mysterious girl appeared in Benjamin's life. She was an ordinary girl from the village who came to conquer the big city. But the task turned out to be not so simple. Student life quickly bored her constantly lack of money, stress, and strain. Then she consciously decided to take a different path. She has had a different life ever since. Cindy spends her time around wealthy guys and they pay her generously. Chesterton decided not to remember how his paths crossed with this lovely young lady. He simply called her up and explained the task. One must first steal one nice guy away from one hysterical woman, and then withdraw from his life herself. Cindy didn't bother to be ceremonious. She went straight to Benjamin's office, knocked on his office, and stated that she was looking for a job from secretary or personal assistant. Benjamin at first wanted to refuse since he already had both, but the advance warning and deputies influenced the course of the case. Benjamin has to get rid of the older woman in the secretary's chair and put the young Cindy in it. And further, to translate business relations into friendly relations was not difficult for Cindy. One day, Chesterton came to Benjamin's office unannounced and found them together in the smoking room. He unwittingly witnessed their conversation. You don't appreciate what you have. If your parents advise you to do something, you should think twice before protesting. But I'm old enough to make my own decisions, said Benjamin. Making a decision is not the most important thing. Everyone makes a decision about everything. Life itself forces us to make decisions every day, even every hour. But the point is how those decisions turn out in the end. Therefore, there is no need to rush. In what is even useful to rely on the opinion of others? We want everything to be our way. Then we get disappointed with everything in life, but we forget about our wrong decisions, Cindy said. Maybe Benjamin is right about something. So it is important to be able to distinguish where our desires are and where the right decisions are. The former and the latter may not always coincide. Parents have been down this road many times, and they may have their own valuable insights. It happens the other way around. When you really want your parents' involvement in decision-making, you don't have them. Like in my case, for example, you want to ask for advice, you want to share your innermost feelings, and you don't have that person. You do, Cindy said. And never like my girlfriends, said Benjamin. What do you do at times like this? Asked Cindy. I just ignore them and choose my girlfriend. Imagine a different reality, where both you and your parents like your girlfriend. You don't have to ignore anyone then, Cindy said. Do I have to ignore all the girls in the world? Asked Benjamin. No, she can be the kind you like, or maybe your parents' taste. Either way, you will know your girlfriend well, and you will clearly understand your parents' thoughts, and you will be the kind of person who knows how to communicate all this to your girlfriend. It's called compromising reality. I realize thinking is not in fashion these days. It's easier to chop from the shoulder, turn away, ignore, insist on your own, and forget about the rest. Cardinal decisions have long been our trump cards, but they create internal conflicts, prevent you from living, and warn you against it, Cindy said. Benjamin did not answer anything. Cindy talked for a long time about how Benjamin had been lucky with his fate, that he should appreciate his opportunities, that he should think about education, about gaining life experience. But the thing that surprised Chesterton the most was her final sentences. When you pass all the tests of maturity, it won't matter to others what kind of girl you're dating or what kind of relationship you have, because everyone around you will trust you. You will then have no one, not even your parents, interfering with your life. They will know that even if you make a mistake, you are able to deal with the consequences on your own, she said. Chesterton nodded his head in surprise and walked on. His experiment seemed to have succeeded. Chapter 10. Do you even know who you're dealing with? Shouted Christina, bursting into the police chief's office. Lady, you can't come in here. All matters are handled by the investigator on duty, tried to explain. But he managed with shouting and hysterics to get the police officers to deal with Dr. Holliday's activities. Christina went home with a sense of satisfaction. She had hoped that the police would nail the doctor properly, and he would finally agree to give her another beauty restoration procedure for free. Or for a less affordable amount, not for the cost of 2 towers. But a couple days later, she gets a call. It's the police. You complained about the activities of Holiday the scientist. We checked him out, the cop said. How'd it turn out? He's revised his client policy, Christina said. It's an internal matter for his clinic. But we did a legal assessment of his activities. In short, he has not violated any laws of our country. Therefore, we have no grounds to punish him, the police officer said. How is it no grounds when he earns 1 quadrillion by fraudulent means without warning clients about the risks? The fact is that people go to him by their own decision. No one is forcing them. The doctor hangs on the wall of his clinic that the artificial face will not last long, that it will reform even from wrong thoughts. And then the client himself is responsible for the exploitation of his face. Citizen, don't distract us from our work. Goodbye, said the policeman, and hung up. Christina got even more angry. She decided to go the usual way. According to the US, I can't get a deal with the doctor. We'll have to pay him again. You won't refuse me, she said in a sad voice. I don't want to discuss the matter now. I'm sorry, Christina. I'll be home late. I have to take care of business and catch up on my studies. Benjamin answered briefly and hung up the phone. Christina had not yet realized that it was their story that had come to an end. Chapter 11 Road, almost a year and a half in confinement and depression, had not gone to waste for Kathy. She had learned to live a little differently. On days of listlessness and sadness, she reached into her parents' bookshelf for the first time to distract herself somehow. In one book, she found a heroine with a similar fate, and in another she found a stubborn man who would not give up under any circumstances, and eventually succeeded. With each new book she read, she had a drop of hope that she would someday be able to give herself and go out in life. With each new book she read, she had a sliver of hope that she would someday be able to conjure herself up and face life. On this day, she was inspired by yet another story of a hapless hero's triumph. What the hell? Maybe someone will be interested in my story, she thought, and started writing a letter to the publisher with the title of her story. She didn't bother much. She liked to call things by their proper names. Such was the case with the title of the book, How I Lost My Love to a Girl of Easy Behavior. Kathy in the book described her love for Benjamin, her struggle to win his heart, her attempts to please his fantasies, and of course, her typical failure with the loss of her artificial and then natural beauty. To demonstrate even more vividly, he attached his before and after photos. After sending the letter, she quickly switched to another clinic, and the letter was already forgotten the next day. A month or more later, her mother brought her a letter in an envelope, and in addition to the letter, there was a decent amount of money. It was not so much money that she could get her face back, but it was substantial enough. In the letter, she is approached by a representative of a publishing house. He writes that her book has aroused great interest among readers, and they intend to repeat the circulation. He also unobtrusively asks to respond to emails Kathy writes to readers in order to stimulate book sales. Kathy couldn't believe her eyes at first. Then she opened her email account and was blown away by the number of emails and responses. Complete strangers were writing to her with words of encouragement, admiring her courage, giving her helpful advice, and wanting to get to know her better. Among these letters was even an offer to be the heroine of a TV program. Kathy accepted the offer without a second thought. No, not to complain about her fate and her failures, but to share her impressions from her experiments, as well as to warn others about how deceitful people can be in the field of fulfillment of our wishes. Shortly after the telecast with Kathy following Dr. Holiday, again the uniformed men came, but the man knew his risks, so he did not talk to them. His lawyer Cyril spoke to the law for him. Chapter 12. Dr. Holiday and his wife Adriana today decided to celebrate the successful closing of the criminal case on his activities. The domestic staff had prepared sumptuous tables for them and then vacated the house. She was irresistible in her gorgeous couture gown. Michael was also happy, but the feeling of missing something important kept him in suspense. He decided to talk to his wife about it once again. "Maybe I can finally convince my parents to come live with us. They won't cause you any trouble, but their presence is very important to me. What do you want to do?" "I'm planning to work in the islands for the winter. All my clients are in favor of it. We will grow and develop on the ocean," said Adriana dreamily. "I've talked to them many times about it. They don't agree. They are well aware that you don't like them, so they don't want to," said Michael. "Well, you're weird. They're your parents. You don't have to love them." "You don't have to love them," said Adriana. "But this is our house. You're the owner of this house. You're my soulmate. You should at least have the courtesy to talk to them once in a while." "Oh, Michael, let's not get all sentimental. I've got my own things to do. And you're the Georgian with your parents. Let's not get negative. I want to raise a glass to our successes with you," she said. Michael did not pursue the topic of parents further. That evening they drank wine, celebrated their successes, and made far-reaching financial plans. Toward morning, Michael had a dream in which a huge black swan was sitting on the roof of his house. The swan's wingspan is capable of throwing a man off his path. Michael sees himself from the outside, as if he were a little boy. He is scared and seeks shelter, but cannot find a place to hide. Suddenly, he sees his parents moving away from him holding hands. He runs after them, but it's as if they don't hear him. The black swan now begins to chase him. Michael stops breathing out of fear. The whole surrounding space floats in his eyes. He tries to scream and call for help, but his voice fades into his chest. Michael opens his eyes to what little broken window of his house. Before he could realize what was happening, two men in special clothing grabbed him and carried him towards the exit. Others came in next and carried Adriana out. The street was crowded. Neighbors had long ago gathered around the house and looked in horror at the flames that completely engulfed the first floor of the huge house. They were giving first aid to the ambulance. She managed to inhale smoke and lost consciousness. Michael was on the verge of passing out, but the firefighters managed to put out the fire in time. Everyone moved away. The owners of the house were not badly injured. Michael they sat in their garden, where the barely visible signs of landscaping remained, and looked sadly at the remains of their home. Chapter 13. Kathy decided to go out for the first time today, despite her fate and unattractive face. The main thing is not to pay attention to anyone and not to stay there long. "If you feel that things are going wrong, come home quickly," my mother advised. No matter what happens, I will try to spend 2 o'clock among people, even if they laugh at me or say something insulting in my wake. It won't affect my mood," she said, and proudly rocked into reality. No sooner had she reached the nearest park than a woman's voice called out to her, "How do you know my name?" The older woman, her face completely covered in wrinkles, smiled at her life from the classroom. I know a little more than you might think. I've lived my life. Look at my wrinkles. Each one has a story," the older woman said. "I just wanted to tell you that you really are what's beautiful. You have your whole life ahead of you. Live and do good, and the rest will come," the old woman said to me, and went on with her warm smile. Then Kathy came to the park and took a seat on a bench. 2 lovers were already sitting there. The girl turned to Kathy and also suddenly said, "Hi. I'm glad you decided to go outside. Believe me, the world is not as cruel as we sometimes think it is. And the world also reflects our inner world. You wrote a wonderful book. I found a lot of similarities with you in it for myself, continuing to create and knowing that you are a wonderful person. Thank you. Did you read my book? Who hasn't? In this day and age, when everyone is obsessed with being anything but themselves, books like this are very interesting." At this, Kathy's mood rose to the heavens, and it seemed as if wings grew behind his back. But the world was not going to stop its surprises. On the way home, an older man spoke to her, complimenting her and wishing her creative success. There was a young woman in a business suit who treated her to a chocolate bar and praised her book. There was a young, handsome guy who admired her performance on a TV program. Her courage. But not everything was going so well in Christina's life. Lately, Benjamin had changed completely. He would stay late at his office, and when he came in, he would go straight to bed. No entertainment. Christina decided to talk to him about it. Benjamin, it's not going to work that way. You and I are still very young. We're spending these beautiful years wondering what you're going to do with your job. I've been held hostage to this whole transformation. I feel miserable. We need to have a serious talk about this, she said. Benjamin sat down opposite her and took her hand. Are you right? We're young, and we don't know what we're wasting our lives on, especially me. But I'm getting smart now. I want to become a worthy representative of my family. If you think the same, you should stop your experiments with your looks and start studying too. Those are the rules now, Benjamin said. What other rules are you going to dictate to me now? How I should live my life? Who gives a shit about school? There are 1 million opportunities in the world to make a life for yourself without all this pointless fuss. You're being badly influenced by your environment. All your father's appointees in the form of your deputies want to turn you into a boring office monster. Come to your senses, fire everyone, and let's go back to our normal lives. We had such a good time. Remember, she pleaded. That time has passed. There must be a measure for everything. I'm not going to backtrack, said Benjamin. How do you want it? Won't you give me money for a new procedure? Or I'll just sit in 4 walls with an ugly face. How long do I have to listen to the lectures of this know-it-all to learn how to look people in the eye with such a face? Christina is hysterical again. Christina, you don't need someone else's face. You were beautiful on your own. Just try to get your looks back, and everyone will be happy. That's not possible anymore either. But then you have to build up your inner beauty. I've heard that many people who are dissatisfied with their looks have worked on their inner world and soared through life on that. Try it. It might help, the guy said. No, you gotta be kidding me. I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving you, said Christina, and started packing her things. When she had packed 4 full suitcases, Christina's ability to think returned, and she sat down to think. But there were no useful thoughts in her head. Then she dialed up her mountain, which had been borrowing their money for the last few months, helping to build sandcastles in her head. Adriana, honey, save me. My young man is kicking me out of his apartment. He says he doesn't care what I look like. What am I supposed to do? Christina, I'm sorry, darling. But right now, I have that question hanging over my head. My house burned down. My husband and I live in the backyard. And every day we ask ourselves, what do we do? Do you happen to know what we should do? Answered them. I know everything, Kina. And even so. Well, sorry, I called another day. You hang in there, said Christina, and hung up. A few minutes later, a cab was waiting for her to her house. On the way home, Christina was still angry and convinced herself that one bad story with one oligarch's son was not the end. There are plenty of rich people out there with her experience and her fighting attitude. She has no intention of staying on the sidelines of life. Holiday's doctors, meanwhile, are looking for hundreds of clients. And now the phone is bursting with calls, and he doesn't answer any of them. Instead of dealing with the problems with his house and the influx of new clients, he went to his old address, where he had started coming less and less often lately. The wooden wicket opened with a creak. An old woman, going through the fruit in the yard, threw her bucket on the ground and ran towards the guest. Son, how long have you been away? We missed you, Michael's mother said, hugging him. I have missed you very much too. How is Dad? Where is he? He asked his mother. Dad is in front of the TV as always. He will be very happy to see you. Then they sat down at the big family table. My favorite berry pie. Michael decided this evening to hide in front of his parents. Mom, Dad, I had toiled and studied and worked and researched and experimented for so many years, and it seemed like I had succeeded. But recently there were events that, after which I began to doubt my path. I would like to ask your opinion. What am I doing wrong? Why is there something inside of me that is constantly rasping and does not let me relax, said. But it's a normal state. Man, you have big demands on the world. That's what pushes you forward. But no, it's a normal condition for a man. You have great demands on the world. That's what pushes you forward, Father said. No, Father, you're wrong. This time is different for my son. That's something we should have talked about at some point. I'm glad he's ripe for it. Father didn't stay at the table long. He ate and went back to watching his TV. But Michael and his mother talked for a long time. Son, you've really accomplished a lot. I am proud of you, the mother said when they had talked about everything. Michael felt like that little boy again, who made himself study hard day after day, to be diligent, to be interested in science, and then in time to open a clinic, to make a lot of money. As a smart man, he realized that everything is done in order to hear these words. That day came. That night, Michael slept in a completely different dream than before. He had dreamed some fabulously beautiful dreams and fantastic pictures. When he woke up in the morning, he told himself that life had been a success. He was in no hurry to leave his parents. From that day on, he started talking to his clients differently. He honestly warned them that they would not be able to wear someone else's face for a long time. He also raised the cost for the first treatment and honestly told them that they would have to repeat it many times. A week later, Adriana called. Michael, don't you think you've been on too much vacation? Your clients are tearing down all the doors. Don't we need the money now? Actually, we're living in a rented apartment ourselves, in case you've forgotten. Said all the signs are on. I've assigned the clients to my assistant. Half of them will refuse our procedure when they find out the truth. I'm already telling them that you don't have to strive to become a different person. You have to protect your identity. I don't get it. What are you brainwashed by the village? You're saying they're screwing up our achievement with their own hands. No, I just decided that I don't need to run anywhere now. I should have come to this sooner, but I kept listening to your wishes. And I've been putting off heart-to-heart talks with my parents for an unknown period of time, said Michael. It makes sense. Your mother always disliked me, so she found a way to bring discord between us. You let her do it, Adriana said, not hiding her anger. Mom had nothing to do with it. She's always been good to you. By the way, I want to take them with me for the winter. I really need them, Michael said. Well, how do you want it? Just let me know in advance before you leave. I want to buy a ticket to the Canaries. I'll be there all winter. And afterwards we'll discuss how to live our lives, said Adriana and hung up the phone. Chapter 14. Kathy came home in high spirits. Clara saw that her daughter was finally smiling for the first time, no matter how ugly her face looked, but when she smiled she became more attractive. Mom, you have no idea. It turns out that there are so many good and deep people in the world, she said, not hiding her delight. Well, and you wanted to live the rest of your life in four walls. How did you come to that conclusion? They came to me and told me everything. I've seen older people who have more wrinkles on their faces than I do, and yet they smile and compliment me. They thanked me for being able to express what is in their hearts. So it turns out that somewhere deep down we are similar to each other, but different only in appearance. How amazing is the world, Kathy told me. All evening, the parents. Then the family went to sleep in their rooms. And in the morning, Clara was awakened again by a precise scream from Kathy's room. She didn't startle much this time. How was it then? Father, what could it be again? Why don't you go and have a look? Did she nudge her husband in the side? No. If I do, I won't have the words to comfort her. I'd rather do it myself. Maybe she's just playing a trick on us, said Liam, and turned on the other side to go back to sleep. She tiptoed to her daughter's room, where the screams and shrieks were still coming from. She cautiously opened the door, and when Kathy saw her mother, she broke out with renewed vigor with a scream that almost muffled her. Mother, Look, the face restored to my own face, which looks so much like you and Father, which has always been with me since I was a child. Look how beautiful, how smooth. Oh, my eyes, they glow. I see fire in them," screamed Kathy, bouncing to the ceiling. "At what a price," said Clara through a smile. "But now he's walking around happy with himself. And again, you go to become like some singer or actress?" asked the father, who had lost peace from his daughter's screams and even managed to reach the door. "No, no." And again, no. "I am perfectly fine on my own," said Kathy, and jumped up to the ceiling again. So the downstairs neighbors started banging on the radiators. Chapter 15. Cindy caught Benjamin late in the evening in his office. When she walked in, he quickly closed the book and put it aside. "What are you reading?" "Nothing. Just some popular literature. I saw this book. There a girl writes her story of her outer appearance, then inner transformation. I'm impressed. I didn't even know you read books." "Well, I can't be the cats of the rich forever," she thought. But she didn't say it out loud. "Yeah, sometimes I browse the hits," she said instead. "Anyway, I just came to say goodbye." "What's wrong? You don't like working with me?" "No, no, it's fine. Actually, from your father's company, we had a contract for a year. It's expiring and I decided not to renew it. But what about our friendship? Let's be honest. We both know this relationship is going nowhere, but it will be part of the experience. I have no beef with you. I don't think you do either. So best of luck to you and new heights. Glad to sit at the same table and chat sometime," Cindy said, heading for the exit. "Wait a minute. Remember when you said to appreciate what you have?" "Is that still true?" asked. "It's relevant for eternity," said Cindy, and closed the door behind her. Then she headed straight for Chesterton's office. He was already waiting for her. He placed the envelope on the desk and said, "I've been watching you influence my son. I think you're doing the wrong thing, and you're in the wrong place." Chesterton said, "To be honest with you, and in talking to your son, I've come to that opinion as well. But it's not evening yet. I've been thinking. I'll continue my studies. I found a job too, just like Benjamin taught me. There was a lot of insider knowledge," Cindy said. "You've done the right thing. If you need help, don't run off the beaten path. If you need help, don't run down a crooked path. Come to us. We'll try to find a case that we'll also pay for if possible," Chesterton said. Cindy, with a light sadness in her heart, headed to the training facilities to make some payment and sleep well for her future. Chapter 16. Michael talked to each client at length and sent many back so they wouldn't ruin their looks for nothing. And when he saw the guy with the prize on his face, he realized that today he was going to have a difficult but interesting task. William took a seat in the chair. "How did this happen?" Michael asked. "There was a fight. Cut to the bone. But the scaring won't go away," said William. "Why did you get it so bad?" asked Michael. "I was saving money. And at the time I didn't have any." "How much did you save?" "But I think it's enough. Let's make a deal so you spend the money on your life. And I'll fix your face. And I'll make sure there are no consequences. You can boldly start a new life and love yourself again," said Michael. "Thank you so much. But what's changed? You used to charge a lot of money," asked William. "Something inside me has changed. I was sure that a lot of money would make me a big man in the eyes of society, but I thought I was small. But one day I sat down with my parents and told them all my worries. Then they said they were proud of me. These words turned me into a big man on the inside. Now I have no need to hoard wealth. Now I do it from the perspective of my own mission. Now I heal destinies and try to bring people back to life," Michael said. And he was right about that. A couple of days later, William stood in front of the mirror and did not hide his delight. "Doctor, I think I look like a Hollywood star," he said, smiling. "You are a star, but you don't have to be a Hollywood star. Everyone has the right to be the star of his life, but without fanaticism," the doctor said. 2 months passed, and another patient seemed very familiar to Michael. "You've probably already forgotten me, but I haven't forgotten you," said a young, handsome guy in a business suit. "Face looks very familiar. I guess we've done business before, huh?" The doctor winked. "Yes, we have. My gratitude to you is boundless. You didn't take money from me then, but I couldn't leave such a contribution to my life without gratitude. Please accept it," William said from the bottom of his heart and put the thick envelope on the table. "But since it's from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you suddenly get wrinkles on your face, don't be afraid. They just appear on the face when the unnecessary things accumulate in the soul," Michael said. The guest did not stay long. Briefly told that he was doing well. Having finished his business, Michael hurried home, where his father and mother are waiting for him. Adriana has all the signs, is also doing well. She had recently called from the canals and said she had met an up-and-coming doctor. Michael did not take offense to her. After all, life is interesting with changes and inner discoveries. This was a phrase from Kathy V.O. Sutkin's book, which people had plundered for quotes, and Kathy herself had started writing a new book. But as soon as she wrote the first page, her mom announced that someone was calling her. Kathy was surprised, for she had no friends left for a long time, and she had not made any new ones yet. She opened the door and saw a long-forgotten face in front of her. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I made you make such a sacrifice, but I understand now," said the long-forgotten face up high. "Why aren't you at school?" Kathy asked playfully. "But probably because I would have liked to go there with you," replied the taller one. And so it happened. They graduated together, each developed in his own direction. True, the adventures in their lives did not end there. But that is another story.